So welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be taking you for a tour of my back garden and what I'm up to and what I'm harvesting at the moment. If you've not already subscribed to my channel, if you could please do so, because you'll get lots of helpful hints and tips all throughout the year from my home garden, my allotment, and from time to time my home kitchen. Now it's a really beautiful day in Kent at the moment. We've had such a long, few weeks of it being really dry, so it's really been hard to keep on top of the watering. So that's probably one of your biggest battles at the moment, keeping on top of it. So a lot of people ask me how often you should water, and it does really all depend actually what we're talking about. If it's stuff that's in the ground that's reasonably established, a couple of times a week would be enough. If you've only just put it in, well, every other day, and if you've just put seeds in every other day, if they're pots, they might need watering once a day or twice a day, all depending on how big or small the pots are. So it's a real consideration at the moment with what you've got. So first of all, I've got my SubPod here. I will put a link in the description if you want to get yourself a SubPod. This is what I use to compost my waste in the garden and the kitchen. It's really awesome. I've got lots of herbs and all sorts of things in here. So I've got some basil here, I've got some marigolds, I've got some coriander, I've got some beetroot coming on, I've got some salad leaves, I've got some radishes, and if we have a look, I can pull out some radishes. They went from really tiny to some of them actually quite big. Look. Tap that off. There we go. I've got a few nibbles on them, but they still seem to taste perfectly okay. So let's have a few of those. So I've got to really start harvesting these radishes, because once they can go over if you let them go too far, and then they go woody. So obviously you pick out the bigger ones first. And apart from anything else, I've got beetroot in here. So if I don't get the radishes out, the beetroots might not fill out, so I do need to make room for the beetroots to fill out. I've got some lovely chives and some thyme there. I'm not exactly sure what's happened to my parsley. It's looking a little bit sad, so what I'm going to do, it's been watered like everything else has. It looks like it's not been watered. I'm just going to cut it back and hope it just comes back and it just needs a regeneration, is what I'm hoping. So I'll pick some more radishes later. As we move over, you can't really see it from over here. I've got some asparagus that's managed to self-seed itself. There used to be orchards here years ago, and I wonder whether it's left from that. So I've been harvesting a little bit of asparagus. It's a bit too tucked away to show you, I'm afraid, but it's there in the corner, and it's been giving me only a modest amount, but still a steady supply of free asparagus, which I'm really pleased about. My beans are coming along quite nicely, so no bloom and no beans just yet, but hopefully it won't be too long. So at least they're starting to grow up. One of the things you need to do is just make sure, we came out the other day and started to twizzle them round, because they should just grow up the cane or strings or whatever you're growing them up. But it is easy just for them to flop to the side and then end up getting tangled in something else. So the wild rocket is doing really well there. I'll have to just maybe chop that back a bit, because otherwise it's going to go over into the other things. So I've got tomatoes in here that are coming on quite nicely. So you obviously got to make sure that you keep watering your tomatoes and also giving them tomato feed. So I think it normally says about every couple of weeks on the bottle to feed your tomatoes, but see what your feed says. And one thing you need to be doing is you need to be tying them up the cane, otherwise they'll get to a point where they'll just flop out and they could break, and you don't want that. The last thing you want to do is to lose your lovely plants. So I have got a pepper plant there, which isn't doing terribly well, but hopefully it's going to be okay. It's been watered like everything else has done, but sometimes you just get the odd plant that doesn't do what you want it to do. So one thing you do need to be doing is removing the side shoots on your tomatoes. Now if you've not done this before, what you have is a main stem going up through the middle, and then you have leaves coming out from the main stem. If you've got a shoot growing in between the main stem and a leaf, they're what you need to take out. A lot of people don't know what the side shoots are. And again, another one, we've got the main stem coming up there, we've got a leaf coming out there, and that's a side shoot, and that's exactly what you need to be removing. When you get close to the top, obviously the top of it can be a little bit confusing, so I personally wouldn't remove a side shoot when you're a little bit further. Let it get a little bit longer so you know you're definitely removing the right thing. Last thing you want to do is take the growing tip out too early, otherwise that will mean it won't grow up anymore. So I've got a lovely load of bloom forming on these, and they're looking absolutely fantastic. I think oh yes, we have got some little tomatoes coming on these ones now. There we go, I think that's a tomtastic, so we've got a little tomato coming there. So that's a really good sign. And the aubergines I planted, they're looking really lovely. So really excited, hopefully I'll get as good a selection of aubergines as I did last year. These are a grafted variety that I get from Sutton's, and they were recommended to me by a good friend of mine who always grows the most amazing aubergines. I grew them last year, and anyone who follows me will see that I grew the most bountiful supply of aubergines, and they were absolutely humongous as well. So I was giving them away to friends and family. There was far more than I could deal with. So hopefully these will live up to what we had last year. I've got some bits I've been hardening off, not that we really need to harden off now because it's perfectly okay. I've just got some net over them just in case the birds get tempted to come down and nibble at them. So I've got some extra squash plants there that I'm going to give away to friends and family. But some of the bits that are left in mine. So these are my leeks, which I'm hoping to put out really soon. Because it's been so incredibly dry, I've held off. We're supposed to be getting some rain next week, so I'm going to be putting them out, and I'll give you some instructions on how I plant my leeks as well. But because it's so incredibly dry, I've got to dig it over, I've got to dibber them down. The ground just might be too dry, so I'm just going to leave it a week. If it still doesn't rain, well, I'm just going to have to do it. And I've also got some spring onions there as well that I need to put out too. So just got some spring onions there that I started off. I find that I often don't get very good germination when I sow them direct into the ground. So I started off doing my spring onions in pots like I do with my leeks, because I find that the germination is just a little bit better. So if we go around and have a look in the greenhouse. So as you can see, the shelves are bare because obviously everything is getting planted out at the moment. I've got a couple of pepper plants which I'm constantly having to water, so I'm going to have to pot these on, I think. They really wilted over really badly the other day, which is probably a sign that they need to go into a bigger pot because they're taking on a lot of water. It would have been really easy for me to have thought, oh, that's it, they're dead, I'll just leave them. But you know what, I watered them and they bounced back up again. So it's brilliant, so I will need to pot those on again. I dug my garlic. It's not the best haul of garlic in the world, but it is garlic nonetheless. So I'm just drying those off on my shelf there, and then I'll tidy them up and then I'll store them. I've got some more tomatoes in here which have come in on much quicker than the ones outside, so you really can tell the difference between things that you plant in a greenhouse and things that you have outside. They are, as you can see, this one's much further on. Got loads of tomatoes on there, no red ones yet. It's often a race between myself and my father-in-law as to who gets the first ripe tomato. I'd like to beat him this year if I can. We've got some lovely ones there. They're some tomtastic, and these are one of my favourites, the Roma, the lovely plum, the Italian one, so they look absolutely gorgeous. As you can see, my lettuce has absolutely gone completely nuts, so I'm eating great big bowls full of lettuce at the moment. So it will start to bolt. As you can see, I've got one, I think I noticed there. I'm going to have to just cut that one because it's starting to go through. It means it's starting to bolt. So rather than let it bolt, I'll just cut the whole lettuce and use it. Yeah, I don't want to waste it. But I have got some more coming along on the allotment, so I'm not, you know, I've got some to replace it. That's one of the things, especially with lettuce, you need to successional sow with lettuce, you know, and radishes is another thing. It's really good to successional sow because they go over and you don't really want that. So I've got my chard that I planted here. Now I covered this when I initially put it out to protect the birds, but I think the time has passed now and they should, I mean, they might have a little bit of a go at it, but it should be established enough now that they should hopefully leave it alone. It's not something that should need to be covered, apart from when the plants are tender. So as you can see, this bright light chard is coming on absolutely beautifully. I can completely eat some of that now, and no doubt I will do very soon. The other thing that's quite exciting, I don't know about anyone else, but I get really excited when peas grow. I don't know what it is about peas, but and they just taste so much better than anything you get in the shops. They're so fresh tasting. If you've never grown your own peas or mange tous, it's really worth giving it a go. And it's not too late to put things like that out because they grow so quickly. But I've got, every day I come out, I came out yesterday and I harvested some. These are the just like the ones where you eat the whole pod rather than, but I've got a mixture. You know, just cut them off, and even if you only have a handful with your meal, you know, it's worth it. And you can pick them big, you can pick them small, so you don't have to, you know, some are a little bit, if you let them get too big, they can get a little bit tough. But I had some the other day and I thought, oh god, they're going to be too tough, they're going to be really horrible. I've let them go a little bit too far. They're actually fine. They were a little bit tougher, but they were still perfectly edible, but they can hide really, really easily, so you do have to have a good old rummage to have a look to see what you've got. So I don't think I've got quite so many today, but I do end up spending quite a few minutes looking for them. And then of course you've got your broad beans. So I did harvest quite a few off the other day, but as you can see I've got lots and lots forming there. Look. One thing you do have to bear in mind, and with all these things, is keeping them tied up. You know, these can easily flop out, so I've got some canes in there and I've got the string around them. And the same with these, I've not got a string around these, I just put canes in and just kind of gently support them to kind of like huck them back. And then of course we move on to my delicious strawberries. Again, I did pick quite a big bowl full yesterday, so I probably haven't got quite so many today. It's definitely worth netting your strawberries because the birds, the various other creatures know how delicious they are. And I think we all would prefer to have them ourselves. So when you're picking strawberries, it is worth just checking that they're ripe all over. So that one probably needs a little bit more. So if I just turn that over, and the next day that'll be ready. So we've got a few more. They're all coming along quite nicely. So I don't know if I have any today. I've got some left over from yesterday. So if I do have to leave these on for a couple of days, it's not the end of the world. As you can see, there's plenty coming. Let's have a look at those. Are they good? Oh, that one is. I often bring scissors out with me, and I'll tell you for why, because it's incredibly easy to pull the whole plant up. I've done it too many times. So if you have got strawberries, there we go, there's another one. That's lovely. And let's have a look, I might have the one over here. I think all these need a couple more days. So if you can try and give them a little bit more light, like I'm doing. I don't know whether it really helps, but I do it anyway. Makes me feel better. I'm not getting a lot of slug damage either now. I don't know whether this was because this was where the chickens were, and they don't like the manure. Got a few stinging nettles in here, so I'm having to be a bit careful not to sting myself. But as you can see, another day or two, and I'm going to have lots of strawberries to eat. So I'm really, really chuffed with those. I will recover those in a minute, but just not on camera. Otherwise we'll be here forever. So as we move up, I've got some cucumbers. Now this is really exciting because I've not really had them out that long, and there's some little baby cucumbers on there. So whether or not they will develop, but as you can see, look, lovely ones there, lovely ones there, and some lovely ones there as well. So I must keep them well watered. That's one of the things, when things are starting to produce, like the cucumbers and the tomatoes, they will need a little bit more water, because obviously that's what goes into producing what's growing. As you can see, we've put a little bit of ash down. We had a barbecue and things like that quite like ash, so we obviously don't waste anything, so we often just put it around things like cucumbers, we put it around things like aubergines, and we find that it obviously naturally feeds them. And I do give them some feed as well. I've got an organic feed that I put on these, so I do give them a little bit of liquid feed as well. So I really hope you've enjoyed wandering around my back garden. I'd love to know what you're up to in your back garden and any exciting things that you're cropping or are just about to crop.